interrupted. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's cold and miserable in the UK, but so weather, it's not quite like California, unfortunately.
I'm actually out in Kauai, one of the Hawaiian Islands right now. So
you're making me very jealous now.
Hey, well, I know Bookvid's all about virtual, but maybe the next one, we can all get together.
Perfect. I'm on my way. I'll come to Hawaii in a heartbeat. Escape this cold weather.
Hey, Jan, how you doing?
I'm good. Nice to see you, man. How you doing?
Great to see you. Yeah, we're doing well. We're just remarking on the different climates we're in, and I think so. I'm in Hawaii. Are you in LA?
I'm in LA. Yeah. It's beautiful and sunny as ever. Although it'll be raining next week. We're being very British, actually, talking about the weather. I love it. I feel right at home.
That's because I started moaning about the weather here.
Oh, there you go. It's your pulpit. There's always the Brit in the room.
Cold and raining, right? Typical Brit.
Where are you calling from?
London.
Oh, from London. Okay.
Yeah, hence the rainfall and the gloomy weather. That's why we went to the weather.
Nice.
Great. So we're just waiting on Takeshi, and then we'll kick it off.
Fun. I have to say the video is very sharp on this. Pretty good.
It is true. Good quality.
And so in the top right, you can actually adjust the view. If you wanted to switch it to grid view, there's like a little speaker view section, and you can swap that to see everyone at the same time. Hey, Takeshi, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. Thanks for joining. And yeah, excited to kick off this conversation on the future of AI in business. We have quite a few people joining, and yeah, wanted to thank you all. And for those who are joining in live, please chat in questions. So I'll be monitoring the questions and sharing with the panelists, and we'll open it up to Q&A after a few of my own questions. And just to give like a quick background, so on each of you guys. So Jan is executive creator director at Left Field Labs. He's been leading design teams for over 20 years and has a wealth of knowledge on AI applications, especially as it comes to creative design and kind of the forefront of technology companies. Takeshi is the CEO of Revcom, pioneering company that's leveraging AI for voice technology and using that in different applications of customer service and relationship management. So I'm sure he can expand on that. And Imtiaz, founder and director of Deep Learn Strategies, top 50 AI expert, specializes focused in ESG and sustainability, and has done a ton of research on the ROI of ML projects, and is a renowned author on different ML projects that are coming to date, and very prominent on LinkedIn. So that's the background. A little bit on me. I've spent the last 6 years working at Meta, first as a data scientist and then as a machine learning engineer, building out models for Meta creator ecosystem. And yeah, the goal for today's chat is really just to talk about the future of AI in business, deep dive into some of the intricacies and nuance there, and hopefully provide people who are joining, who are running their own businesses or who are interested in the future of AI with a new perspective, and hopefully we'll all learn something new from the call. Sound good?
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Sounds great. Great way to spend 60 minutes.
Definitely. So first, I guess want to kick off with Takeshi, and wanted to see, like, how do you see voice-driven AI applications evolving, and what are some of the use cases that businesses should be considering for both short and their long-term roadmaps?
All right, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me, and I'm thrilled to talk with all awesome people. Thanks again. So thanks for the question. First of all, I want to kick off that I want to mention that the intrinsic value or intrinsic or issue, I would say, of AI is that if you do not have any data, you cannot create or you cannot even use AI. So the fundamental of AI is a data. So if you have a data, you can create or you can use AI. And if you look at the company's data, it's going to end up with three: voice, graphic, and text. And if you deep dive each data, you realize that voice and graphic, which touch point is email, chat, Office soft, is already well organized as a big data and stored as a big data, right? On the other hand, if you look at the voice data, which touch point is phone, web meeting, face-to-face, it's not stored as big data at all. It's just merely recorded, right? It has not tagged as surrounded info, like when, how, what conversation was made, and what was the result, right? So you have to have the well-organized data. Otherwise, you cannot train the data. You cannot train AI. I talked to the CEO of T-Mobile and Deutsche Telekom the other day. He questioned me. We have 30 years of recorded call center or support center data, and we are trying to build LLM, T-Mobile LLM, and based on the T-Mobile LLM, we are trying to build T-Mobile call support center AI, but we haven't been able to build one. Why, Takeshi, right? And I answered, the answer is super simple. The training of AI and training of people is pretty much the same. Somehow, executives think that if we have huge amount of data, we can train AI. But imagine that if you give 30 years of voice recorded data, just recorded data, what's going to happen if you train the people, right? I think nothing is going to happen, right? Or somehow people is going to get different direction, and it's not valuable people is going to be trained, right? So the same thing can happen to the AI, right? So you have to have the well-organized data. What's good and what's bad, you have to be very organized data, and based on the organized data, you can train AI. So it's very critical to think about your data structure. Is your data structure is very, very well organized and tagged, and the information itself valuable or not? So you have to think about that. Very carefully.
Yeah. So I think to your point, like garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah,
I think that's So I think on that note, kind of understanding the importance of the quality of the data and then structure. Like obviously, a lot of these models require like large amounts of structured data. I guess Imtiaz and Jan, like opening it up to you guys, like how do you see kind of companies being able to leverage AI that maybe like don't have a ton of quality data sets like of their own? And, how have you seen, I guess, companies you've worked with like start to leverage AI in interesting ways?
Yeah. So if I just jump in and thank you, Takashi, I think absolutely it's fundamental. Both the quality of data and the way it's stored and used is essential to model performance, AI model performance. We are at a point with the advantage with transformers with self-attention mechanism compared to the previous generation of recurrent neural networks such as LSTMs, long short-term memories, which were very difficult to fine-tune and do transfer learning with. Whereas with these large language models that use transformers and self-attention mechanism, fine-tuning and transfer learning is much easier. And so you can get away then taking a large language model and then getting a smaller data set and fine-tuning to it. However, as to Takeshi's point, it still needs to be quality data. So without trying to get too technical, the transformer models are using self-supervised learning and masking. But you still need an element of a ground truth, of labeling, of accurate labeling, especially if you're going to fine-tune it to a particular use case. Now, for instance, I'm just making this up, if it is looking at a healthcare application, or if it is looking at say, fashion retail, or if it is some kind of general customer service, you still need to have your data set that is appropriate or relevant with some degree of ground truth there, even if you're using self-supervised learning. So where do you get that from? Well, as Takashi pointed out, many companies perhaps have not understood and appreciated the value of correctly storing their data and having it cleaned appropriately. And when there was the rush taken a lot of data scientists a few years ago, and then many companies realized actually they were missing the data engineering part. So the data scientists were frustrated and couldn't do much because the data engineering was wrong. And I think that's the big differentiator between, say, a Meta that you came from, Jesse, and the likes of a Google and the likes of a Microsoft and OpenAI, etc., and Amazon, is that the technology companies view data and technology in general as investments that can generate revenue, whereas many of the legacy companies view technology as a cost and an irritation and an annoyance, an evil necessity rather than a business opportunity. And I think that's going to change dramatically over the next 2 years. That in actual fact, because data is going everywhere, that the world is increasingly digital, COVID crisis accelerated that. And as AI and agents accelerate their reach, that in actual fact, companies can't maintain competitive advantage or even business viability unless they really start to invest into this area, which starts from culture internally and understanding that they have to be analytics and data driven all the way through, starting at the top of the company. It's easier for startups because startups are more agile and can build that mindset from the outset. But for legacy companies that have been doing certain things and processes over 20, 30, 40, 100 years, often, it's very hard to make that change, and it has to come from the top.
It's fascinating because you could almost replace the word AI in this conversation with just being digital. I think the number of companies in the US who haven't undergone a fundamental digital transformation is still enormous. I think there's only 35%, the last time I read, I think it was in The Economist, 35% of companies are truly digital, so that means that beyond just having elements that are digital, they've transitioned their entire operations to cloud-based and digital. And so when you think about AI and data and owning your own data, do you guys think that it's going to create a bigger gap between those companies that are already digitized and those that are still on the tail end? It's going to supercharge those companies even more aggressively.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, I wholeheartedly agree with you there, that in actual fact, the pace of changes is only going to accelerate. I think what we're going to go to through in the next 2 to 3 years, I think people are really not prepared for it. We're going to get GPT 4.5 and potentially 5 from OpenAI. 5 is rumored to be, or expected to be, fully multimodal, which will multitasking, which will mean it will be able to take whether voice or still images or video, as well as text as input and also as output, which I think is really going to be a massive game changer. Although I still have question marks whether or not that approach by OpenAI is really sustainable, because to scale AI beyond, say, the internet into the legacy world, we'd have to go for more neural compression, but that's something we can talk about later on this call. However, for more efficient AI, if you like, that's more, however, it is going to jolt people and it is going to shock them. And the sheer pace of change as 5G networks scale and the IoT accelerates, that in actual fact, companies and CEOs are going to find that their business models are getting redundant very quickly. And before I hand over to Takeshi, a good example is the music industry and what happened there. I have a friend, Scott Cohn, who's mentored me in the past, great guy, who sold his startup, The Orchard, for 200-300 million, I forget the exact number, to Sony. And he points out The Orchard, which was doing digital music distribution. And he would go in the late 90s and early 2000s to the I call it record companies, the CD companies, if you like, on the high street and say, let's collaborate on the internet. And they'd laugh at him. And they were not interested. And they kept on saying, our CD sales are going up and up, we don't need you. And then, of course, Steve Jobs launched the iPod and they disappeared. They're gone. Nobody goes out onto the high street to buy, or very few people do, so to go and buy music. So these changes can just come bang like that. And when they do, they're irreversible. Companies disappear, even if they've got 50-year, 100-year history.
Right. Yeah, the adoption rate, I think, of ChatGPT was record-breaking amongst, at least in recorded history for any digital product.
Yeah.
We're talking weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I mean, I think it's a chance to every people. Every people have a chance, right? Even the company who hasn't been able to think about the value of data is a chance, right? Because everybody stands on the same start line. So that means if you can think about it seriously from now on, you can catch up anytime. Because there's some layers, right? EAS, infrastructure as a service, like AWS, GCP, Azure, data layer, like Snowflake, Box, Dropbox. On top of that, it's an algorithm layer, like Midjourney, BART, GPT. On top of that, application layer, right? And I believe that algorithm layer is going to be commoditized. Like, because if you have the huge model, language model, token size, computing resource, you can build NLU engine. So, of course, Meta will do, Amazon will do, IBM will do. Everybody is going to get in and put huge amount of data and training in it, and everybody can have any kind of NLU. So NLU engine is going to be commoditized. So what's important is, as Adam said, the quality of data. If you have a little tiny amount of quality data, you can fine tune these models and then you can utilize it. So it's super chance, right? You don't have to have huge amount of data. You can have a little data with quality.
Yeah.
You can utilize AI. It's, everybody has a chance. So it's good timing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree. It's a special time. And I think you're speaking to like the democratization and like kind of the open source access of people are able to access, these models that are like top of the line. And even the process of model development, like you can kind of out of the box get a model that's already like exceptionally performant and you can plug your data in. So I guess with that framework, obviously people have individual data sets. And I like that we brought up kind of OpenAI and their recent announcements. It's like, what are some of the things that you guys are most excited about as far as applications of AI for businesses and in your own lives and kind of, you know, things that you're seeing in the industry? Maybe Jan, you can chat about like kind of, you know, especially in the design world, which was probably hit first, I guess, with some of this stuff.
Yeah, well, it was hit first. I guess a percentage of the design industry hadn't expected how fundamental a change it was going to be. I think the assumption was artificial intelligence and neural nets, etc., would the last bastion would be creativity, but actually, in fact, it's kind of almost been the opposite. Most of the very visible applications of AI have been in the creative domain, you know, from the ability to create images with, you know, DALL-E, Adobe Firefly integrating into the Photoshop suite, video generate, you know, completely out of AI with synesthesia and Descript and packages like that. So that's been the very visible. I think the more fundamental change has been that people are reappraising every aspect of their business and going, is this an opportunity to speed up, improve my accuracy, improve my ability to deliver in spaces that I'm currently non-competitive, or maybe orchestrate my business operationally in a completely different way? And so the type of work that we've been involved with mostly has been helping companies capitalize on this big term. So it's still a traditional design process, you know, system design process. We look at how they operate, what their pain points might be, what their opportunity spaces might be. And then we introduce a big new disruptive technology and test, iterate, and say, you know, is this something that, you know, could potentially change your business? And so we found some very promising steps and some less so, because AI, as I think the comments here on the data, first of all, it's not just the cleanliness of the data, it's also, do you own it, is another big one. And then also, how are you preventing, you know, ethical abuses? How are you ensuring that, you know, it's being used in a way that's inclusive of humans and transitions the business the right way? But we're seeing very promising steps. We're seeing things in so telecoms business. They've been commoditized for a while, and now they're realizing that when they can integrate AI plus 5G, they can help companies do things like orchestrate complex systems, robotics in warehouses, mobility systems. So that has the potential to disrupt fundamentally the way we operate and we move goods and packages. We've also seen things in the area of the co-pilot space. I think it's probably a term where AI isn't making the decisions, but it's accelerating my ability to make a decision. And that's everything from operational decisions to, you know, in the medical field, we mentioned medical, you know, potentially diagnoses being a lot more accurate. And then I was just seeing this morning or just yesterday, was it Humane launched their product? It's a little pin you put on your coat. It's powered by ChatGPT 5, I believe. It's all voice, no screen. There's a laser projection on your hand. And I think what they're trying to suggest is that we may be coming to the end of the phone. And a lot of agencies have been doing interfaces, right? As users, we navigate data through screens and interfaces and buttons. But if there is an intelligence system that is conversational, reactive, but also predictive about my needs and wants, potentially there's a layer of brand interface and product interface that's not needed anymore. And so maybe this is the beginning of another transformation. We had the iPhone almost 2 decades ago, and then maybe now this is the next one where screens are beginning to disappear and we're beginning to interact as businesses with each other and with computers and machines without the use of a screen. And so a lot of our work has been helping businesses make those steps, put a toe in the water, and see what might be the benefits.
Yeah,
I don't want to either.
Yeah. So the reason why I focus on voice is going to be the voice is going to be the next big thing. Well, I mean, voice is going to be the next UI, right? So last decade or 2 or 3 decades, UI is a GUI, graphical user interface, like, you know, punching with fingers, whatever. But from now on, I believe that it's going to be a VUI, voice user interface, right? It's a kind of word of Minority Report, right? If you're wearing glasses, you can view the interface is going to be there. You don't even touch anything, right? If you look at the Apple Vision Pro, there's no screens out there, so the user interface is going to be changed. So I think you know, this is the big movement of technical change. And let me make a comment with a different perspective. I think it's interesting to consider the impact of NLU, like GPT, Bard, and others, on the human brain. The human brain is composed of 2 parts, right? The old brain and the new brain. The old brain can be further divided into 2 categories, like, you know, mammalian brain and the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain is said to be mainly responsible for reflexes, right? While mammalian brain is said to be mainly responsible for camaraderie or friendship. So around the old brain, a new brain, cerebral cortex, was attached to the Homo sapiens brain, and the Homo sapiens, surprise, got the language, thus making it possible to communicate everything, and the science, civilization developed, as we all know, right? So now, what has happened with the advent of NLU is that a part of new brain has been replaced by NLU. So that means, you know, the relative value of the old brain will increase. So the instinct part of brain will become much, much more important. So what I've been doing is that we've been building Takeshi GPT. So because we have, I started business in 2017. Since then, my you know, comment on Slack, my comment via Zoom, Meet, WebEx has been recorded. So I have a huge amount of data of me, right? So what I you know, made is Takeshi GPT. So everybody can consult, everybody can talk on the Slack. My bot, Takeshi GPT bot, can reply. And 99% of decision is correct, right? Because it's logically correct. Yes, and yes, and yes. But rest of 1% logically makes sense, but somehow I think this way or this decision would be interesting, or it's going to be important considering the next 5 years or 10 years. So 1% of decision is making not logically, it's like emotionally or instinctive you know, decision. So think about the CEO's job is going to be not logical decision, is going to be the, you know, human being you know, CEOs of job, right? So don't think logically, think intuitively or instinctively, and if the result is good, you're going to be a good CEO. If the result is bad, you're going to be a very, very bad CEO. So sadly, I think the leader job is going to make not logical decisions. It's going to be the very, very important next 5 years.
It's interesting.
Right.
You say, I have a quick comment on that. So when you described it, it sounded a little bit dystopian in some respects, right? Because we've seen the impact, right, of algorithms on the masses when we're given bite-sized information based on what we think we'll be interested in, and that can sway public opinion on topics, etc. And it's one of the topics that's, I think, very front of mind for a lot of the work that we do is business orchestration using AI. So, there's top-down businesses, there is bottom-up, there is horizontal businesses, but I think there's going to be a point where there are businesses that are the major operational decisions are made by AI, perhaps, and some of it is relinquished because one of the things that when I left automotive Detroit and I moved to LA, one of the last things that transitioned in automotive when I was still really involved in advertising in that space was the use of AI to predict what images the audience would like best for a new vehicle. So up until that point, all the executives would receive multiple pictures of the new car and they would select one, and whatever one had the most points would end up on the billboard. And just as I was transitioning, they were finding AI was better at predicting what people would like, what part of the car, what angle, what color, what trim level. And so they had already given that decision over to AI. And the roadmap for decision-making for businesses, I think, is increasingly handed over to AI. And I was curious to know, as we move fast, and clearly there's the appetite and clearly there's the ability to innovate, how do we temper that with, an ethical approach and ensuring that, because it's hard to legislate, governments struggle to keep up. How, as an industry, do you think about this issue, and how do we ensure it's done in a way that serves humanity? And so,
I would just like take a different approach from you.
Yeah,
I think AI is good at predicting and finding correlations in data, probabilistic approaches, etc. I think as a Google DeepMind researcher recently put on LinkedIn a statement, no machine, including AI, should ever make management decisions. And I fully agree with that because they're not accountable. You can't fire them. Takeshi was talking about the CEO, and if the CEO does badly, they get fired. So if you have an AI model that makes a disastrous decision, whether that be firing a nuclear weapon autonomously, or whether that be making a massive trade investment decision on the markets autonomously, and a disaster perhaps follows because it does the wrong thing, you can't fire them.
Yeah,
you can't put them in jail. Right. So I think it's important to have a delineation whereby management decisions are still left with humans because humans are accountable. But what the AI can do, you're talking about a situation where it's predicting things and automatically putting content in front of users. But that's really operational. That's more operational rather than strategic management decision making. And I think for the strategic decision making, that management side should remain on the human side very much. Coming back to an earlier point though about the UI that you were discussing about before, I agree with the view that screens, that dominate everything, probably aren't. It's not a natural user interface. It's not, and it's taken people away from people, hasn't it? How many times are you walking into an elevator? People barge into you because they're too busy in this. We've forgotten each other, right? And it's led to some of the. I recently did some postgraduate study with some of the younger people, and a lot of them. It was shocking to see how a lot of them had just lost social communication skills. And a lot of the professor, I did some guest lecturing, and the professor at the business school was saying many of the students now the younger students have limited attention spans, whether that's from TikTok or whatever, etc. So it is, you're right, both Jan and Takeshi were saying, it's impacting the human brain in the way we are. And I do agree that glasses probably will be the next interface, lightweight glasses. We know that Apple and others are working on them. We know that they're having some rumors are there's some challenges with overheating. And this is why we come back to neural compression. You can't go and put a GPT-5, which is going to be astronomically bigger than ChatGPT or 3.5 or even 4 and parameters on a mobile phone, let alone on some compact lightweight glasses. It's not the way you're going to scale AI in the era of the Internet of Things. And if our policymakers are trying to fight climate change and get energy efficiency, ChatGPT, for instance, on a daily basis is consuming reported to consume, or estimated, I should say, as much as 1,300, that's 1,300 homes in the US on a daily basis, and then a huge carbon footprint. And then think of GPT-5 then, that's going to be orders of magnitude larger. That's not the way to really scale intelligent AI into the future, especially in an era where resource constraints are important. And in the IoT and smart cities, smart homes, smart offices, etc., you're often going to have devices operating in power-constrained environments, low batteries, and also resource constraints. So we're going to go to a world of neural compression, but a world where we're going to try and keep accuracy high, so you get good performance, but also good enough. Maybe it may not be at the level of a GPT-5, but it'd be good enough to give that personalized experience to the users wherever they are, with a massive reduction in energy efficiency, massive improvement rather in energy efficiency and reduction in energy consumption. That is going to be key to scaling AI next over the next few years to really get it out there. And also then you come to the data security and aspects and data privacy, and then you were talking about ethics, etc. And I'm not having a go here at Jesse, at your former employer or any of the other tech majors, but would you want, in an era of glasses, would you want Mr. Zuckerberg or anyone else seeing everything you or your family are doing at home, right? So when glasses take off, and I agree with Takeshi, voice and indeed gestures, etc., are going to be the way that we interact, because Jan will be more the expert than me, but I can imagine rather than having a laptop, you could just through voice ask for a virtual screen to be put there, and whether drag and drop for your even for coding, or have it an AI assistant and interact with them through voice and gesture, and have them do the tasks for you, whether you're building a model through code, or whether you're doing an accounting model as a finance analyst, or whether you're preparing a presentation as a marketing pitch. So it's going to be a very, very different world, which is highly interactive AI, if you like, not just generative AI, but actually interacting with you at a personalized level, and with ultra low latency real-time responses. But then data privacy is going to be key, including if you're going to scale in healthcare, like Jan was saying before, and indeed areas of finance and insurance where privacy is important, but also in your own home. So again, if you can get AI to work locally on the device with neural compression, you don't need to transmit that data back and forth to the cloud and back. You can have it local and then use differential privacy to effectively keep it secure and private. So maybe but you still get the benefits of machine learning and AI in giving a highly personalized experience. So I personally believe that's where we're going to go to within the 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, so we touched on a lot of points from the cyborg brain to the spatial computing to maybe even replicating yourself in AI, like Takeshi AI bot, and using AI as a co-pilot or personal assistant. I think those are some interesting use cases, definitely for like individuals, I guess, within your industries. And I know Takeshi was talking about voice. I'm like also curious with like design and tech, and maybe even like some of the sustainability or ESG work. Like, how are you guys seeing the industry start to adopt AI? Like, I guess in short term, and if you have any insight on like maybe like the next like year roadmap that CEOs or like different companies are starting to think through AI applications.
That's almost a 60-minute topic of itself. But top line, I mean, about 8 years ago, I spoke at South by Southwest, and the conversation I was trying to start was that there are already tools which you could put under the umbrella of AI that disrupt how we design. And designers, we often, have this sort of heightened perception of ourselves, because we are dropped into a situation, and then we look at all the different angles, and then we come up with an elegant solution. So but what that experiment and that talk revealed to me was that actually those days are counted, because If you break down a traditional sort of design process, discover, design, develop, deploy, each of those phases and subphases are incredibly well suited to AI because they require the ability to look at big data sets, to derive insights quickly, to, if you train them well and you have the right data, come up with unbiased insights to capitalize on. And so I think to Takeshi's point, the designer is effectively making decisions and presenting them to the end user or the client or the organization in a way that's palatable. But the amount of decisions and the amount of work that designer do is slowly, being reduced, being squeezed. And on the one hand, 8 years ago, I felt a little bit like a deer in the headlamp. I could see this coming. And I had this anxiety that there's going to be a point where our ability to be creative as humans will be surpassed by something that has all the data, all the speed, and all the processing power, and will supersede our need. But what I've come to realize, and we could still change, is that AI struggles with empathy, with genuine empathy. It's nebulous empathy. We say walk a mile in someone's shoes. I don't know if you can train through effectively a language model, a software to understand the human experience and to make the right recommendations, and at the individual level and also at scale. And so what we're finding is AI is being used to iterate, to simulate, to prototype, and sometimes even to present and show a vision. But ultimately, designers and ultimately all of us as humans, it's our ability to empathize with who we're doing this for that is still the biggest differentiator. And that's how, when we read an essay, when a student used ChatGPT, and you can tell it wasn't written by a human because it misses some of the weaknesses, some of the over-indexing on something emotional, or the ability to empathize with a situation or colleagues or the environment. And so I think it's in some ways, to be better designers, I think we have to be more empathetic people, particularly in the age of AI. And it's challenging us regularly to question what we're being given and to genuinely try and understand, is this serving the end user, and how so, and how deeply is it serving them?
Great point. How about with you, Imtiaz? Any use cases?
Yeah, and I'd echo what Jan said, because if you focus on the end user and giving them a great experience, whoever your end user is, whether it's a business, and you're B2B, or whether it's B2C, that's what it's all about. And what AI can do is give you an advantage that you can leverage. It can help you give you efficiencies, speed to market, understanding the customer. But ultimately, it's about the customer experience and giving value to the customer. And as long as you remember that, that's the key thing. In terms of the next 12 months, I think it's important to also not get carried away with the hype. I think it's important to understand all the points that both Takeshi and Jan have made. Understanding your data, how you're collecting it, how you can use it, the various ethics around that so you don't get into trouble, and how to focus on your use cases. When we've seen data science projects, and Jesse, Gartner, etc., have shown when 80 to 90% of them were going wrong, it was usually because, yes, often having the data and the quality of data, or the quality of the data science team, but the number one reason was that the business team and the data science team didn't understand each other. And I think Takeshi was kind of alluding to that they speak a different language, didn't understand each other. The business team thought AI would be some magic, wave a wand, and here you go, pull a rabbit out of the hat. And the data science team didn't understand what the business team wanted. And that led to no clear objective, and therefore a failure of the project. And you have to have a crystal clear objective. What are we trying to do here? Are we trying to reduce costs, find efficiencies in a certain way? Are we trying to improve customer retention? Are we trying to gain new customers and gain revenue? What's the objective of our project, this specific project, and what do we want to achieve with it? But I think over the next 12 months, we're going to see probably more announcements from OpenAI. We're going to see the open source community accelerating. From your previous employer, Meta, Jesse, Llama's been out there. We've seen the open source community finding ways to compress models and putting them out there in Hugging Face. We've seen Falcon from the UAE. We've seen others come out as well using LoRa, sorry to get technical, and other techniques, etc., that are out there to like accelerate and make models more efficient. And who knows, maybe a year from now, we might have open source companies. They probably won't be at the GPT-5 level, but they could be ChatGPT or even 4 level, and narrowing the gap. I do think, though, however, we're going to see more and more pressure to find alternative techniques to transformers with self-attention, because the self-attention mechanism is very, very heavy on resources. It's hugely successful. I love it. I started to use it myself in early 2020 and write articles about it when GPT-3 came out. But it is, and I built large language models from scratch in those days, from getting the data set, cleaning it, as Takashi will know, very time-consuming language models, and then building it up from there. However, I do think we're going to go to other approaches, whether that's, I never pronounce it correctly as a data science community do, RQWV, or whether that's going to be things like spiking neural networks, or a combination of those things are going to come through and lead to massive efficiencies. There's hyenas from, I think, Canada as well, and plus some of the researchers in the US, which is taking a different approach with convolutions. I don't know which exact approach will come through, but it is going to have to be something more efficient and compressed. But if you're a CEO or an executive team, it's about getting out there and building through, because keeping your data set clean and investing in it, because as Takeshi said, your algorithm, if you can build it in such a way that you can plug in and plug out, right? You can modularize it so that as long as you've got your data set there and you can update the algorithm, because the algorithms are going to keep on developing and advancing. This field is going so fast that you don't want to totally fall in love with your algorithm today, because your algorithm today, 1 year from now, could be totally out of date, or 18 months from now. So you're going to constantly be updating it and amending it, but getting your data in and making sure you're not getting data drift, and making sure that you're testing, that you're updating, as and keeping it relevant. I think that's going to be important. But a thing that will really, I think, catch the imagination of CEOs and executives will nevertheless be probably GPT 4.5, and then if 5 comes out within 12 months, I don't know if that happens, and also the advances from the open source community, because that's just going to proliferate more and more, they're going to see more and more of their competitors adopting these technologies in different forms and in different ways. So it's really trying to stay relevant to the customer, like Jan said, keeping a real focus on the customer and how can we use this technology to really enhance that experience, and in terms of our own internal operations.
Agreed. And yeah, perfect segue into Takeshi, CEO. Yeah. I guess, how are you keeping the customer top of mind, and what are some use cases that you're excited about?
Well, let me make a comment with from different perspective, right? I think we should change in terms of two-way, right? First, what is AI, right? It's obviously, everybody said artificial intelligence, right? But I not even more like artificial, right? Because we cannot predict the output. It's not like human made. It's out there. So it's rather augmented insight is gonna be. We have to change mind. It's not artificial. It's gonna be augment. So it's gonna expand the human Homo sapiens potential. The artificial or augmented insight can give you a new insight. When you think in that way, I think it will solve the data privacy or data governance, because you don't have to look the personal data. It can be more cluster data. right? Like, Amazon recommendation engine, you can, well, augmented insight can give you a new discovery, right? Maybe you like this, thinking about these kind of cluster, like, Japanese, age, religious, background, or geographical, places you live in, right? These kind of cluster info is going to be very, very critical. So you don't have to deep dive in the personal data. It can be a cluster data. In that sense, it can solve the data privacy or data governance issue, in a sense. So you have to think about how can expand the potential of human being with the augmented insight application. It is going to be very critical. And second part is think about the creativity, right? Well, I think creativity, after all, is about understanding human emotions, right? And everybody say, hey, AI cannot understand the human's emotion. But interestingly, it has not been improved, scientifically improved, what emotions are. And it is most popular theory is said to be it's a hormone balance, right? So what's going to happen if you can make a table, input what kind of things is happen to the people, and output hormone balance by age, sex, religious background, the area you've lived in, and it's going to be slightly changed. Well, I think if you talk to people from Saudi and people from Japan, the emotion is totally different. I've lived in Saudi 1 year. I couldn't understand very well, right? But artificial insight can understand if you can plot these data and install to the AI. So next 5 years or 10 years, these kind of plotted data, hormone balance and input can be tied, and then AI can understand the emotion. What's going to happen times mid journey with these creatives, the human being's emotions is going to be like this, and then we're going to be fully controlled. It's going to be interesting and scary. So you think about what emotion is, what AI is, and then think about the application. It would be very, very interesting. Yeah.
I just quickly interject. Sorry, yeah, very quickly on that. I would disagree with Takeshi. Insights of AI at a current level of models, even GPT-5, etc. I don't think transformers with self-attention alone are going to get us there, or even combined with reinforcement learning. I think right now AI only understands its data set, which is the internet, and doesn't really understand the real world, which is what Jan was alluding to. And I think for common sense, etc., I know that OpenAI is saying they're going to give long-term memory or capabilities of GPT-5. Let's see if that happens. There are techniques out there to improve memory capabilities, which ChatGPT doesn't have right now. And that would be one problem solved. However, common sense is a big, and causal reasoning is a big gap. And I do think we'd have to get logic in there and the ability to learn on the fly. And that's why I think spiking neural networks with dendritic computing will be key to really get there. That's my own view. So we still have big challenges over logic, because when you talk to some of the researchers in Stanford, etc., and they say, well, how do we optimize the loss function, or for common sense, right? They don't know how to do it. There's no clear. Exactly, Jesse. You're a data scientist, right? We can do it for computer vision. We can do it for language. We can find a way to minimize the losses or maximize the accuracy. How do you do it for common sense? We don't know what the mathematics would be. clearly. I know there's predicate calculus out there, first order logic, etc., but we haven't yet managed to automate that or find a way to really integrate that. Although people talk about neuro-symbolic AI, but we haven't really managed to scale that so far. So that's going to be the big challenge to get there. Coming back to the other point though, which was the data element. I think actually synthetic data will have to play a big role. There's already talk about data running out to train far more models, and so synthetic data could also get around the data privacy issue, because you could anonymize the sample sets and then scale it from there. So I do think actually generative AI, and there's startups in Silicon Valley that are working with taking generative AI models and using it to create synthetic data. And maybe that's going to be a big way to help with privacy in areas like healthcare and sorry, yeah.
No, I was fascinating to hear you speak about this. I guess one of the biggest challenge we've had, practical challenges, has been with hallucination, and it's been in sometimes unexpected ways, and it's been also in quite profound ways. So part of it has to do with either a limited data, or sometimes our clients may have been trained on synthesized data. It's hard to tell sometimes, but I'm curious about, you guys are on the bleeding edge of developing these systems. How are we stepping into this next frontier? And I know we've only got 5 minutes, so it's probably too big a question, but and ensure that we have AIs that behave in a way that is predictable also and trustworthy. And how do we fit that within society and business?
Yeah. So right now they've been using, the main technique, a lot of the techniques being used right now, for example, reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF, has been used heavily with the models, the chat models, etc., and the large language models, and often crowdsourcing for that. But then, of course, that requires a lot of resources, and that puts startups at a disadvantage compared to the giants who can afford that. So, but that has been one of the main techniques being used right now to try and sanity check these models and stop them from going all hair, if you like the movie Hair, and behaving in a dystopian way. Or so what happens is you give a reward, a human will give a reward using to the model, or the model will gain a reward rather for positive feedback from the human, and a negative score when the responses are wrong during the training phase, and then it gets out to the public. And I expect that's what OpenAI will be doing with 4.5 and 5 heavily. But I think Takeshi was going to do.
Yeah, so definitely probably another big talk on regulation and government's role in overseeing AI development. I think there is a very valid point that MTS had made. Kind of where we're at right now is more AI being really good at pattern recognition, and I think the data set to kind of model empathy and emotion is definitely something people are working on, but I think we're probably a ways off on that, at least from my perspective. And so I know we only have a few minutes. We have a question from the chat from Paloma, and I think this is applicable to a lot of kind of business owners and people interested in AI. And she says, with AI changing and advancing every day, what are some good resources to help to learn new AI tools and stay up to date? So I guess, how do you guys stay informed in the development, say, about AI, and what are some resources that you'd suggest?
AI.
It's very
ChatGPT. You ask ChatGPT, and then you can get a newest info, right? Like what I'm doing is, let's summarize the newest thesis to GPT-4, right? The token size has been increased dramatically. So you can just, let them read the thesis and make it summarize it. You don't have, I think, time to, read all, newest theses, all kind of that. But through GPT, you can quickly catch what's the latest, right? Yeah. Adam?
Yeah, it is very challenging because the velocity and volume of research is so fast and vast. that it's very hard to keep up, even as a research on the research side. So if you're really fascinated on the research side, whether it's archive or there's other publications and specialist publications, but it's very hard. So what I tend to do is to check there are about a dozen or so computer scientific prominent researchers, and I tend to look at what they're saying, and because they tend to catch on some of the more significant research that's gaining traction. But if you're not so much in the research side and you're more like, well, actually, I want to keep up to date in the business and what's going on there, I think there are good publications out there. I'd say follow the people here on this call. I think we'd all post things and see who are interacting with and what kind of content they're liking, because often we're sharing things that come from through research, business-friendly publications that are covering AI. There are a number of publications out there. KD Nuggets, I've written a few pieces for them, but it is a bit data science orientated. But there are a number of sources out there on LinkedIn, on Twitter, that used X or whatever it's called now, communities out there, and I'll send it over to Jesse to share maybe afterwards with you.
Sorry, Jan, I muted you. I thought there was background noise, but there you go.
No worries. One thing I was just going to say is, yes, I think there's a bunch of newsletters, and if you hit us up on LinkedIn, we'd be happy to share with you what we read. But I would also suggest AI is permeating everything that we do today. I mean, there is not a single vertical industry discipline that isn't either currently disrupted or about to be disrupted. So I don't know. My recommendation to people when they ask me is, unless you're interested broadly in the field of AI, I would suggest that you follow your passion point and dig on the AI path of your passion point, because it's getting disrupted, whatever it is, from art to law to architecture to education. And so there's going to be AI to read and to learn from for your field of interest.
And just on that point, it is affecting every sector of the economy. People have always thought, AI, well, there's still a lot of executives out there, and I hear this in the legacy companies that go, it's not really relevant to me, and all this chat GPT stuff and it's like generative AI, it's not really relevant to our company. So wrong. AI is affecting every single sector of the economy, every company out there. And 2 to 3 years from now, those companies that have ignored it, those C teams, could well find they've gone the same way as the record companies in the high street.
Awesome, guys. Well, this has been a super fun conversation. I want to thank Jan, Takeshi, and Imtiaz for joining. So I'm going to share out all of their social links so anyone attending can follow us and interact and see what we're working on. And hope to do this again soon. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.